This is Bill of 81 United Body, speaking as part of the leadership training program. I'm talking today about gathering. I'm going to do this in two sections. The first section is briefly how to do that when you're actually with people physically on the earth. And the second section will be how to do that when you're functioning using technology, modern social media to gather. So let's do a reminder first off that it's you sow the seed into someone, then you gather them into something, then you teach the group about how to function in that something that you gathered them into. Then you start prophesying to them, train them how to hear, how to see, and so on. And then you send them into their training. And when they're fully trained, you send them out to do the work that you trained them for, or they've been trained for. One more thing, I see sowing as being a male function and gathering as being a female function. Certainly in human biology, sowing is a male function. But Yeshua spoke about Jerusalem, old Jerusalem, that he longed to gather them like a hen gathers her chicks. And this reveals to us that gathering is a female function. And of course, whether you're biologically male or biologically female, we all function in both spiritually male and spiritually female functions. So we all can sow and we can all gather. I just wanted to show you that Yeshua himself was functioning in a spiritually female function of gathering. Okay, now let's talk about this example I've used before. So let's say you come to an African village and you preach the gospel to them. You're sowing the gospel to them. Then you gather them into a local ecclesia that's for that village, and you start teaching that local ecclesia how to function as an ecclesia, other things as well, teaching about the kingdom. Then they need to learn how to see and hear. So as a prophet, you train them how to see and hear, and first demonstrating that to them by proclaiming destiny to them, functioning as a prophet towards them, but then also functioning as a prophet who's training them into being prophetic. Then you would, as an apostle who is training them, you would send those who are called. You back up. Everybody is called to be sent. So let's say it this way. You would send people out to function in sowing. That's what Yeshua did. He's called 12 to be apostles. It says in scripture that he called them that they might be with him so that they watch him do what he was going to do, and also fellowship back and forth, this relationship. But it's also the beginning of training. So they watch him, they see what he's doing. He trains them, then he sends them out to the villages that he's going to go to later, and he sends them out to function in sowing. He then comes along and gathers after they've sown. Now, I'm not really sure whether we then have to send people out to gather, send people out to teach, send people out to prophesy, and so on, or whether it's just that initial sending to sow, and afterwards the rest of it naturally flows as on-the-job training, because once you've sown and once you've seen about gathering, you're going to gather. You don't need to be sent to gather. But I do see that Paul, for example, sent Timothy to do functions in an ecclesia, to function as an apostle in an ecclesia that Paul had already founded quite a while back. And so Timothy was coming along to function in the later functions as an apostle as, towards them. And Paul sent Timothy to do this, but Timothy, I think, was already fully trained when Paul sent him. Okay, so we've seen the initial idea about this progression of sow, gather, teach, prophesy, send, with respect to a geographical location that you've now got believers living in that location, and they're now formed into an ecclesia. But what about online? How do we gather online? And the answer is we make use of the technology. And we also train the people on how to sow and gather so that they also will sow and gather. It's not just you as the apostle who's doing all the sowing and gathering. You've done initial sowing and gathering, and you demonstrated sowing and gathering so they can see how to do it. You taught them how to sow and gather, then you send them, get them going on sowing and gathering. How do you do that with technology? Well, we've got Facebook pages or whatever the equivalent other technologies are that are equivalent to Facebook, and I'd love to hear about them from you because I'd like to learn to use them. You do sowing, you gather people into your Facebook page. And now that they're on your Facebook page, now you can sow various truths, various gospels into them and gather them into that truth. And I have found that one of the best ways to do this is to gather them use the Facebook page as your initial platform, and then you sow into the Facebook page, the people on the Facebook page, and you gather them into chats or live Zoom gatherings from that Facebook page. And the chats and live Zoom gatherings will be around a particular truth. So I have a chat that is as a dialogue group for the Age of Melchizedek. And I've gathered people off of the OUB Facebook page, off of my Facebook page, off of the OUB chat, which is the general chat, into this chat that is specifically for the Age of Melchizedek. And of those on that chat, I am continually gathering people to come to the bi-weekly Zoom, where I have a live dialogue with the people that come. So I'm gathering from big to a smaller group, from that smaller group to a smaller group, and each gathering draws people closer into relationship with me. We can relate on the chat. We do relate on the OUB chat. Both Jane and I do that. We can relate on the chat for the Age of Melchizedek dialogue group. I do that all the time. But I also am still drawing the people that are on that chat into the live every 2-week dialogue so that I can see them with my eyes on the Zoom, and they can see me, and I can hear them, and they can hear me live on the Zoom, and we build a relationship. There's also a gathering out of those who are learning from you and are fellowshipping with you, are functioning with you in the functions that go along with these identities and names that we reveal to them, the realms or the cities or whatever, the ecclesia. But there's also a further gathering. So let's use Yeshua as an example. He gathered people to be his disciples. So those who actually followed his teaching and were doing his teaching were disciples. And Yeshua told the 12 to make disciples by baptizing them and teaching them to do everything that I have taught you to do. So a disciple is someone who has been baptized and is following Jesus and is hearing what Jesus said in Scripture, what he's currently saying today, and is doing what he said to do. So that's the general group. So Yeshua drew people, sowed to the crowd, some of which were believers and some of which were not. He gathered the ones who received his sowing into this group called disciples. And then from the disciples, one day he went up the mountain to pray all night, and his father gave him 12 names to call. He came down and he called these 12 names to be apostles. So he's gathered out of disciples, he's gathered 12 specific people that he's now going to train as apostles. This is leadership training at the highest level. So he's first gathered out of the crowds into disciples, then he gathers out of the disciples into the apostles, into the leadership training. I am always doing this. I'm always looking for people to gather into leadership training. I'm always looking for people to gather off of the internet into the OUP Facebook page, and from there into the various chats. I remember the day that I came off of the internet into one of the OUP chats. I still remember that. And all of us who have come to One United Body have come off of the internet. We've been gathered in. Jane has worked very hard to have that Facebook page function the way it is. It's a lot of time and effort in that Facebook page, and also, frankly, a considerable expense too in that Facebook page, because there's advertising involved with gathering people in, and advertising is not free. So this is how you make use of the technologies of the day, and it's also how you gather people from the crowd to the disciples that are being taught by you, and there's disciples of higher level ages that are being taught. We must call them disciples at that point, but it's the same thing. And then from that group, we gather a smaller group into leadership training. And these people then, once they've been trained to some level, will begin to share the sowing, gathering function with us. And the net that we're casting out there will be that much larger, because they're joining us in functioning as sowers and gatherers. A gathering is a net, a fishing net, gathering people in. And you design the technology to function as a fishing net, and you train the people to join you in fishing. Okay, we've got the overall general picture of how to use social media to sow and gather, but also how to use how this is based upon what Yeshua did and what the apostles did. It's built into the framework of the universe. And once you see the pattern and learn the pattern and learn how the basic skills to be able to function in this pattern, then you too can sow and gather. And if you're able to teach, then you can also teach those that you gather. So I see initially we train people to do this function as part of One United Body, to join us in that, but then people are going to actually establish their own Facebook pages and establish their own chats and function in sowing, gathering, and teaching. Some will be under the umbrella of One United Body, and some of it will be outside One United Body, because there'll be some people that will be sent completely outside One United Body to start a complete new work of their own. They have that as part of their destiny to do that. Not everybody does. I mean, Jane started this work. I didn't have a destiny at that time to start it. Okay, so you've got the general principles, and you can get a general idea now of where your place is in this process and how to function in it yourself.